Securities offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through CWM, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Carson Partners, a division of CWM, LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors. This is The Way to Wealth, with host Scott Ford, a jiu-jitsu fighting, woodworking, beekeeping entrepreneur who is also the managing director, partner, and wealth advisor of Carson Wealth. Financial freedom is the goal, and clarity and simplicity is how we'll get there. Let's get to it. This is Way to Wealth.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Way to Wealth podcast, where we're all about making money simple, allowing you to focus on living now and doing that fully. Super excited today to have a friend and colleague, Jamie Hopkins, with us. Jamie, he has more things after his name that I couldn't maybe even say, but there's plenty. He's one of the smartest people I know. Let me leave it at that. So, Jamie, welcome to the Way to Wealth podcast.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Well, we got to get you to know more people then. You already know a lot then, but if I'm one of the smartest ones, we just got to expand that network here.
Well, we'll figure it out. And look, you may change that today. We'll see how we go. We'll just see where we get. No, it's all good. So, thanks for being a part of the Way to Wealth podcast. And of course, we're partners with Carson Wealth and how we know each other. And you do have such a strong background in academia and certainly in finance, as well as being a professor in this space. So you are being humble. You do have certainly tons to share. So I'm excited to share you with the audience. And man, we'll jump right in. So as you know, with the Way to Wealth, it's all about making money simple, and it's a process. And in that, I wrap this whole thing about healthy, wealthy, wise, and happy. And so for me, the wealthy piece, which is what the Way to Wealth is about, is like, how do we get people financially free, which is what the Way to Wealth is designed to do. Before I jump into that, I gave a little bit of background on you, but if you wouldn't mind, I know you, the audience doesn't, just a little bit of your background and just kind of why are we here talking today? How did we get to where we are today?
Yes, let's, take the stroll down memory lane. The first and most important thing, I've gotten better at this, right, is that I'm a person first, and I've got a wonderful wife and 3 kids and a dog, and we live outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right in Villanova. I love it there. I went to law school there, and we've kind of made that our home now, which is a wonderful place. But I travel a lot. I'm actually out in Omaha today, where our headquarters is, as you mentioned too. I've been a professor, I think, for 11 years now, which, it feels like I, just walked in the door for that first job as a professor. But yeah, it's been 11 years now. And I taught in grad school too as a grad assistant, and that takes it back even longer. But I've been through a lot of education, good and bad. As you said, MBA, master's in tax, master's in personal financial planning. I've got my JD and then a bunch of other additional credentials over time. So I'm a big fan of education. And making things simple is really what the best educators do. And it's funny, you ebb and flow on how good you are with it. I was actually a better teacher right when I started, and I got worse. And one of the things I realized is I started making things too complex, right? Like I learned more and more and more, and I read a lot of tax code, right? And I think I've got 35 peer-reviewed published articles. So I do research, I dissect, new bills, and I would fall into the weeds too much. And I could tell that I was doing a worse job teaching because I was getting excited about minutia that other people didn't need to hear. And I joined Carson 3 years ago now, roughly speaking. My anniversary date actually is January 1. A lot of people say that it's close. I made it official on the 1st, was my very first day. And, I think the office was closed and I came out and was here by myself, right? But I joined to work on the retirement side of things, and my roles continue to evolve. I work on our coaching company. I work with partners like you. I build a lot of content. I help the financial planning team. And I love it. I love being kind of in a lot of different areas of the world, and I love building things. I grew up in a household, neither one of my parents graduated from college, and that's kind of how we got here. Is my dad passed away when I was 8. He did roof, gutters, construction, roofing, and went up on a house and was coming down, and winter weather in Baltimore, and ladder froze over, and he slipped and fell and was gone. And then all of a sudden, my mom, who doesn't have a college degree, is running a construction company without the person that did any of the work, and is still to this day, she's still working. And she looks like a lot of Americans where didn't have a 401k and a pension, and, is paying off her mortgage and put her kids through college like me and my sister. And that's what put a passion into me about finances, just thinking, how could have our lives been easier had they had access to planning? I mean, they didn't have a term insurance policy. And you think about somebody like that's a perfect example of somebody who would have benefited. High risk job, young kids, income earner. So just the foundations of planning and how people move to wealth and what that means to them is, core to me. So I never get tired of it, because people say, well, you work pretty hard. And I go, yeah, but if I ever feel like I'm tired, I that's my well, right? The why story. And you go back to it and you say, I'm never going to get tired thinking about how do I improve somebody like my mom's life. You don't get tired of that.
Yeah. Now, you know what, man, it's one of the coolest things about doing this podcast is I start with that question almost every time. And a lot of times, we've known each other for years, and there's people I've known for decades, and they'll end up sharing a deeper part of their why story that I never heard. Like I've not heard that part of your story, and why it makes so much sense why you have all these freaking letters after your name and why you're so passionate about what you do, right? And I have a similar one that this audience knows. So yeah, thank you for sharing it, being vulnerable and open and transparent. And it's just great to, like I said, for me, just to hear and learn the deeper why of why you do and are so passionate about what it is. So thanks for sharing with the audience and with me, candidly. When you think about financial freedom, so looking at the way to wealth, the way is living now, and that's intentional, and as you could think about your dad, and I can think about my parents, and yeah, like, did they ever really fully live now? And your dad may have. The point is, like, we don't know the future. So though it's super smart and we need to plan for the future, we also need to fully live now. And so that's intentionally the way. That's what I'm talking about. Then the two is the team. I'm a believer that the team, the game is won or lost right there on the team that you pick, and, orchestrating a team that's really not only good at what they do, but they don't have egos, where they can collaborate and work collectively amongst each other to get to the best answer and be rolling in the same direction. And then the wealth is an acronym. W is what's your foundation. Then we have the 3 buckets and the tax diversification. All of that is planning on one page with the idea of making people financially free. So obviously, I have my thoughts on that I'll share and have in the past and will more today, but I'd love yours, Jamie. Like, what does financial freedom mean to you? What's that look like?
Yeah. And I'll, I guess, drop a couple of my own variations on this too, which is, I asked this question to somebody. I've been actually, writing another book, and part of it is including the, financial freedom language, because I love it. I've heard it from you and others and learned from you. But somebody brought this up to me, right? Is financial freedom to you freedom from something or freedom to something? And I thought that was a very good way to put it. And I think for me, where I am in my journey, financial freedom today is mostly freedom from things. I went to school. I had $200,000 of law school debt when I came out of school. So initially, my first moment of feeling any type of financial freedom was, I want to get that loan paid off. And I did. And I had a goal to get that paid off before my daughter was born. And I think I got it paid off in May, and she was born in August. And that was a big goal to me. But that was a freedom from something. And I didn't set at that point in time freedom to things. I've more started to do that recently. And when I first started, it was probably too small. I think I was limiting myself there on, right? I mean, we do that a lot. Our brains think, if I set numbers and I set goals, those are, ways to frame something. And I took a different approach recently. I was talking to, he's a coach of sorts out there. And he was saying, aspirations. A lot of people set goals, but if we don't set that bigger aspiration, goals actually become limits on us, not bigger picture things, right? We actually are limiting ourselves by setting a goal of, I want $1 million. Well, why is it not 10, right? Why is it not 100? And why does that number matter? And so I've been trying to work on where I want to aspire to be long-term, and I'm not done with that. And that's okay. And I tell people that all the time too, right? It's a continuum, it's a process, it's a journey. But I've thought more and more about that. That's the thing that I want to get better at, and then set those 2 moments. What does it give me the ability to do? Spend more time with my kids. And that's a big thing, being that, right, I lost my dad at an early age, and I want to be around for them. I want to be at their soccer games and basketball games. And I travel a lot, but I want to get to the point where they have that freedom to say no to more things in life and take that time with family. It's not the only thing. I have big goals on impacting just kind of the access to this profession from students. So we don't have a great pipeline into financial services. For people who may or may not know that, it's a tough business to kind of get in and be successful in. And I want to change that. And that's something that, is it just money that changes that? No, but guess what? You need money to be able to change it.
Yeah, that's well said, man. And I'm not sure who I originally heard that from. Dan Sullivan's one of many that I've heard that, but the whole freedom from versus freedom to. And it's so interesting because this audience, typically business owners and entrepreneurs, and that's me. And that's what happened to me. So part of getting into being a business owner was freedom from. It's like, I'm not going to work. I never have worked for anyone. So I was like, I'm not going to work for anyone. So I'm going to start my own business. And, through age, I continue to accumulate some more gray hair. So hopefully some wisdom comes with that. But one of the things I'm learning is, exactly what you're saying. It's more freedom too. It's not avoiding something. It's what do I really want? And so that's the whole health, wealth, wisdom, and happiness that I talk about. That's the whole idea of way to wealth, as being one piece of it, to then have the freedom to focus on health, mental, spiritual, physical, and focus on living in the present moment. When I think of happiness and wisdom and these things, to have the freedom to do it. And that's just a great way to look at life. And I think it's wise. I think that's what we're here to do, is grow and learn. When I look at the whole wealth piece, so health, wealth, wisdom, happiness, I look at wealthy, the first thing that I have listed has 3 things listed under each one of those headings. Under wealthy is financially free. And look, again, that's what Way to Wealth's designed to do, is make people go, I'm good. And then second, I say, is enough. Because that's real wealth, when you're like, I don't care what the dollar amount is, but you're like, I'm good. I have enough. It's because the reason I say that is, you can be a billionaire and you can be freaking miserable. Why? Because you don't have enough, because you want 2 billion. And that's why I put it there. And then lastly, in my mind, is love, right? This whole game's about love. And so having love in your life, you got someone you love and that they love you, that's real wealth. And so I used this analogy before, but it maybe have been a while. I tell people, look, what if I told you, just to prove my point, what if I told you that this process, Way to Wealth, it's going to guarantee you $1 billion? Well, people are like, yeah, sign me up. Perfect. And with that $1 billion, you're going to have miserable relationships and you're going to be completely unfulfilled. You still want it? Of course not. So it's like, that's not the real game. And it's a piece of it. We do want to make sure we're financially free. So if you think about that, I'll talk more about Way to Wealth process. What steps would you say as a business owner, entrepreneur, or a retired person that would make sense, and things that they need to be thinking about to be financially free?
Yeah, I think for business owners too, this is exceptionally true, right? I ran my own consulting company for a while, and I've since shut that down. So now I'm a stakeholder here at Carson, but not running my own business anymore. One of the things that I remember during that time was I spent a lot of time, like a lot of business owners do, reinvesting back into the business, right? It's a common thing. How do you be successful? You reinvest back into the business. a lot of business owners fail to take the time to reinvest back into themselves, though. So that's a very important distinction there. And they fall into it. And you see people who work to 65, run a very successful business, never reinvested back into themselves. Sometimes they didn't even save for themselves, right? They saved in the business. And so sometimes we use that terminology, start with the end in mind. So how are you reinvesting back in yourself? So whenever you get to that aspiration, that goal down the line to financial freedom, you've actually designed it in a way, right, that you got to where you want to go, that you didn't just kept building and building and building and building and building, then showed up one day standing there and looking around, not know where you got there. And you probably have one of those coffee mugs somewhere too, right? Though, like live life by design, not by default, or whatever one. So
Yep.
that's part of it, right? Like you've got to figure out where you want to go. There's a nice quote about that too, right? If you don't know where you're going, all roads take you to nowhere. So start with that, kind of set that out. I didn't do that with my first business. I had no long-term goal. I just knew that I could do it. And so I started it. And, one day I looked around and I had a bunch of clients I didn't want, and I wasn't fulfilled with working with them, and, kind of found a different way out at that point. And that's another good, right? That was freedom from stuff, not freedom to.
Totally. It's a classic example. And like, I'll put an exclamation point on what you're saying. I've said this a lot. Say it again, because it's exactly what you're talking about. My recommendation for a business owner, where should I invest? Number one, in you. The absolute best investment you can make as a business owner, candidly anyone, but for sure a business owner, an entrepreneur, the absolute best investment you can make is in yourself. The second next best investment you can make is in your business. Then we should be talking about things like way to wealth and other things, financial planning. In my opinion, that's the best way to go about it. And that's exactly what you were saying. For everyone, but specifically business owners, entrepreneurs, is there anything, here we are, early 2022, is there anything that business owners should be thinking about this year from a planning perspective that you would want to share? And that could be tax planning, estate planning, and I know you have expertise in all these areas. Anything that the audience should be aware of as a business owner for 2022?
Yeah, I'll stay out of I gave this advice at the beginning. I'll stay out of the tax weeds then. Obviously, pay attention to the taxes. We're going to see some tax changes here. I mean, whether it's a huge bill, small bills, bunch of different things. Look, tax laws change every year. Be prepared for more changes. So that's the one constant thing out there is additional changes. So you got to pay attention to that as a business owner. And if you're just kind of looking at the conversations that are ongoing in DC right now, people are looking for tax revenue, and that is not a partisan issue. It's both parties have been looking for tax revenue for a while now. It doesn't always look and feel like tax increases, but there's going to be tax changes out there, and that's the reality. So businesses, equity, those are things that are being discussed, and not just this administration, but past administration. Going back to Tax Cut and Job Act in 2017, there were talks about some equity changes on taxes. So there's something important to watch out for. I think when I talk to business owners, and I do a lot of traveling and talking to people, hiring is the big thing. I think that's the thing that's got people worried. You've got inflation numbers that are scary. And the flip side of that, though, is I've been asked more times in the last 3 months, right? What is my employer going to do about adjusting my income for inflation than I have in the past decade, right? We had 2% inflation, for 3% inflation, 1% inflation, numbers that really just didn't catch anybody's eye. And all of a sudden we saw 6.2%, and a lot of people out there that work for you, that walking down the street know that inflation is high. It wasn't a conversation the last couple of years. It is right now. And that's something that's not going to go away overnight, in the sense of it's in people's minds. They see it when they go to the gas station. They see it when they go to Home Depot. It's visual inflation, which is sometimes different than sometimes we get inflation on things. We don't really notice it as much, but those are ones where the prices are sitting in front of you and you're looking at it and you're saying, hey, it's a lot more expensive than it was last week. So I think that's going to be a challenge for business owners for the next year or two. I think I saw a McKinsey report, which is a big consulting firm, that said hiring is going to be one of the biggest challenges for business businesses for the next couple of years. And I agree with that. I hear it from people. So I think if you're a business owner, get ahead of that, because the worst thing you can do is have your top talent that maybe you were underpaying for a couple of years because it was just natural. You didn't stop and think, what happens if I lose them? And might be 10, 15% of their pay. And, typically you don't want to lose your best person because you just didn't act soon enough to have those conversations about, how do we make this so you're not looking around, right? That we're rewarding you.
100%. Yeah. My premise, I've read lots of things on this. I mean, there's a Netflix book, I believe it's Netflix out there. And then there's certainly, I know of, trying to think of the company, they make boxes, huge company. Heard the guy speak at an event, one of Vern Harnish's events. But the idea was hiring and retaining A players and pay top, like you pay the top, whatever the top going rate is, it's what you do, because an A player is like hiring 3C. And so it's still more efficient for you, and you don't want to lose them for the comp conversation. So I totally agree with that. And then if you're out there listening and you're a business owner and or not, and you think about inflation, well, how do you keep up with inflation? Well, one is invest in yourself, make yourself better. The more skills you have, the more you can make. That helps you keep up with inflation. Two, if that applies to everyone. Two, if you think about the way to wealth, and again, the wealth being the acronym, what's the foundation? E is established savings. That's the savings bucket. A is all expenses covered by income. That's the income bucket. And then L is living with inflation, just what Jamie's talking about. That's the growth bucket. So how do you do that? Well, you could start a business, because that's a growth engine. You could invest in equities, because if you're putting gas in your car and you're complaining because inflation and the prices of it going up, well, one way to counter that is owning some of the companies that control the prices going up, et cetera. So just some things to think about as a consumer, business or not, things that you can do about inflation. Because I hear you, we don't have time or capacity. You probably have knowledge, I probably don't, to go down this rabbit hole of just the actual debt. And you look at, the money supply or monetary system and just the amount of debt that we have. And I know I hear that a lot as far as that and the impact on inflation. Bottom line, having a plan, I call it like a pandemic proof type plan, because everyone knows what that word means. How can you go to sleep at night truly feeling financially free, that you have a pandemic proof plan? Well, I know my answer, and people we work with, is called the way to wealth. My just bottom line point is you should have that in place, whether it's deflation or inflation or all these different variables. Having a process that can be laid out and make enough sense to you that you're comfortable going to bed at night going, you know what, I'm financially free, I'm good. So that's what we do. Anything else, Jamie, before we wrap things up, as far as that you would want to share with the audience?
Yeah, my media training was always say yes to that, right? If anyone ever asks you anything else to add, I got one more thing, right? So I will do my appropriate media training and respond. And this one's just on my mind. I've never even talked about this on a show, but I will. I'm not a big fan of hourly pay if you think about top value. And it's an interesting thing. So if you think about this, right, I've done consulting and I've charged people hourly before. And if I ever did that again, I would never charge hourly again. And here's my argument on this, right? Let's say somebody comes to you, right? You're a business owner and they say, hey, we can do this project. It's going to be hourly. It's going to take us, maybe a year, and we'll get it done for you. But it's going to take us a year. We're charge hourly. It's going to cost you $50,000 probably by the time we're all done. And you say, okay, so we get this done in a year, $50,000. All right, sounds reasonable. Hours, maybe $500 an hour or something comes out to be. Somebody else comes in. They say, hey, Scott, I charge a lot, right? But I get this done in a month. Who should you pay more for? I shouldn't pay less, like for something that can be delivered in a month,
right,
than something that's going to take a year. Well, if they both charge hourly, I'm going to pay less to the guy who comes in and says, hey, I get this done in a month. Of course not. I should want to pay more for that, right? And that's one of the problems that I have if you are top value on charging hourly to people as a business, because really it's not because I spend more time, I should make more money. If I can deliver a product faster for you, I actually should get paid more for that, not for spending more time on it. And, I came from the legal world, which is why I have this problem. And I've been always trying to codify it down to some degree. Attorneys actually hate billing hourly. Like if you talk to attorneys, like their least favorite thing about being attorneys. And, it's funny because the financial planning world, a lot of people have started to move to this and they say, oh, well, lawyers do it. Let's be more like lawyers. I'm like, go talk to a lawyer. They hate billing hourly. It's not a good thing. It should be more outcome based. And I think that's value that you provide in life, value provided as a business owner. You should be compensated by the value you provide, not by the hours you spend on something. And I think that general notion is true across the board, right? Think about life. I want to be rewarded by the value, not the time I spend on something. Just because you spent 5 hours with me doesn't mean you provided value. I could provide value in 1 minute.
Yeah, I love that, Jamie. It actually ties to our whole conversation today. And I think of a time and effort economy versus a results economy. So as a business owner and entrepreneur, I couldn't agree more. When you invest in yourself and reinvest in your business to be more capable of creating a result, dollars follow value. So you're bringing a value. It shouldn't be about how many years did it take you? Who was it that did the painting and, scratched it on a piece of paper and said, here's what I'm charging you for it. Yeah. And they're like, are you freaking kidding me? It's taken you 2 minutes to do that. And it took him 40 years to get to be able to do that in 2 minutes. So it's the same thing. So no matter who you are, business owner or not, investing in yourself, I think ties spot on to what Jamie's doing. Dollars follow value. So I couldn't agree more. Results are what matter, not time and effort. So focus on results and creating value for people, and dollars follow that. And the only other add-on, I think it was Parkinson's law, that if you allot time to something, it'll expand to get it done. So in other words, if you wanted this pool put in out back, and you allotted 3 months, it's going to take 3 months. If you put it in and you allotted 3 weeks, it's going to take 3 weeks. So I think it was Parkinson who said that. Anyway, enjoyed the chat. Would love to have you back on, Jamie. You certainly have a wealth of knowledge, and enjoy our conversations and learn something as I did today. So would love to have you back on at some point, man. I know you're busy.
Yeah, it's no, I love it, and you are right. It's the Parkinson's law, right? It's the space in your house too. It's the one thing I've learned with 3 kids, right? We thought we had a lot of space, and it's all been filled up.
That's it. It's the exact same thing, 100%, right? Another one I think that he said is, it's like getting, I can remember having a car that didn't have, at one point, I didn't have friggin' heat or AC, let alone heated seats. Could you imagine buying a vehicle without heated seats now? So that's the whole, a luxury once enjoyed is now a necessity. So anyway, these things, these human biases are a reality. So lots of knowledge. Thanks for sharing, Jamie. We'll do it again if you're open to it. Everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Way to Wealth podcast, where we're all about making money simple, allowing you to really focus on living life fully and doing that now. Thanks, Jamie. We'll do it again, and we'll catch you all next round next week. Later.
Jamie Hopkins is not affiliated or registered with Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC. Any information provided by Jamie is in no way related to Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, or its registered representatives.
The opinions voiced in Way to Wealth with Scott Ford, Managing Director, Partner, and Wealth Advisor of Carson Wealth, are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Legato Family is not affiliated with Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, or CWM, LLC. Carson Wealth, 19833, Leitersburg Pike, Suite 1, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742.